Mini episode 600 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello and welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode number 600. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris here to introduce what we're calling our 600-800 Spectacular. The confluence of our 600th mini episode and our 800th total hour of programming, which includes our 485 hours of previous episodes. To be precise, we cross 800 total hours at about the halfway point of this show, approximately the 23-minute mark. To properly celebrate the occasion, we've spent the summer combing our archives to bring you football in the 2010s, which we're dropping on the eve of the 2015 NFL season. This show examines America's most popular sport from a 360-degree perspective. Those who have played it, led it, and covered it, speaking on many noteworthy topics: modern strategy, the fantasy football landscape, player health and wellness, the college football playoff, video games, evolving media coverage, cutting-edge improvements to the Hall of Fame and NFL films, and much more. While the FDH Lounge is the show where nothing is off topic, football has been our most covered subject over the years, and our great guests have provided us with tremendous insight about it. This show pulls many of those greatest hits together. We hope that you enjoy what they have to offer. Kind of take us behind the scenes of some of what goes into the preparation for a game. Obviously, you're talking to key coaches and players from both teams, but do you catch a weekend walkthrough with either of the teams? I mean, what are some of the things that go into this behind the scenes as far as how you and your crew get ready for the game?
Well, I'll give you the basic week. We at least from my perspective, I'll start on Monday. Whether it's going on the internet, reading everything there is to know about the teams we have on the upcoming Sunday, and I'll use this Sunday's Philly-Atlanta game as an example. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm at home, or I could be on the road, obviously, doing hockey or some other event. But Monday through Thursday is the initial preparation. Reading articles about last week's game. On Tuesday, we'll get a packet from each team, an email, and then a FedEx packet with all of their updated notes and statistics. We'll pour through the league stats as well. I basically have a pile on my desk, about 4 to 6 inches thick, come Tuesday and Wednesday with all the information that I need to go through. I'll also watch a DVD of each team's previous game. So that's kind of what you do on your own Monday through Thursday. Usually we travel in either Thursday night or Friday, depending, geographically where we're going. And that's myself, Darryl Johnston, Tony Siragusa, producer, director, and a couple of other production guys. And this Friday, we'll go to the Eagles practice at about 11 or 11:30 in the morning at their facility in Philly, right across from Lincoln Financial Field. We'll watch practice. We'll sit down in a conference room when practice is over. Usually talk to 3 or 4 players who we request, and the head coach, and usually at least one, maybe both coordinators. In the case of the Eagles, Andy Reid has a big say as far as the offense. So usually we'll talk to Andy and then Sean McDermott, the defensive coordinator. If the head coach is more of a defensive-minded guy, then we'll talk to the offensive coordinator. So we'll spend a couple of hours with the Eagles. Friday night we'll have our production dinner where we'll talk about some of the things we learned during the day. And Saturday, when the visiting team gets in, we'll go to their hotel and do the same thing. We'll sit in the conference room and talk to Mike Smith and either one or both coordinators, 3 or 4 players, and go through the same drill. Saturday night, we'll have our production meeting where, again, we go over some of the stuff that we learned over the last 24 to 36 hours. We'll look at some of the graphics and video elements that were prepared. We'll talk about the opening to the telecast and order some dinner as well. You can never forget about that. So it's really a full week, as far as the preparation, Monday through Thursday on your own, Friday and Saturday with the group. And by Saturday night, you feel like you know everything there is to know about these two teams. We could be doing a game week 12 involving two teams we haven't seen before, but their fans know everything there is to know about their teams. So you really have to play catch-up on the entire season. And, once Sunday comes at 1 o'clock, you have all this information. You probably don't use 10% of it, but, it's all ready just in case, in your mind and in your notes. And, then once the game starts, you really let the game dictate. You don't want to force things in to prove that you did the work and to prove that you studied the teams. And, with us, we have Moose up in the booth and Goose on the field, so it's a bit of a different type crew than most others. Tony's microphone is actually open to him all game. He's not like the typical sideline reporter where we'll throw it down for an injury report. He's a sideline analyst where he'll give his opinions on what's going on in the field. So, Moose and Goose have really developed a great chemistry over the 6 or 7 or 8 years they've worked together. I've been with them for 4 now, and rarely step on each other, rarely talk over each other, and hopefully it's entertaining to the viewers.
You've seen in recent years there's not a lot of bell cows, and maybe the Seattle situation is kind of unique because how many Marshawn Lynches are out there. Todd Gurley, he's a guy who, if and when he gets 100% healthy, maybe projects that way. Perhaps Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State next year could project as that kind of a guy. You've got to be somebody who's big and with speed. But, it's almost going to take somebody like that to make this list year in and year out as opposed to scat backs, no matter how great they may be. Right, Ken?
Well, I don't know if you know my philosophy. I love, the running game. And I wish it would go back to somewhat of the Seattle type, more of a balanced type offense.
Yeah.
I'm not as, with the 5 wide. I love the excitement of the game, but I just like the purity of the game when you got that mashing fullback in front and let's see who, can win it at the line of scrimmage type of situation. But, in my evaluations, looking at the college level, I say you got a nice crop of running backs coming the next 2 to 3 years. So, that could, you got to have the available athlete, bottom line.
Sure.
And so a lot of times, with the offenses going the way they are, a lot of your good running backs are linebackers now at this time. The 6'2", 230 or 235 guys that have the feet needed in space. So a lot of times I think the colleges are moving those guys to the defense, to combat these offenses, and they're getting lighter and faster and quicker. So that's taken away from the offense. You do have, the receivers coming out because mainly it's primarily passing game now. So more or less, like you said, the trends. And more coaches are trending towards, where they feel the offense is right now. So, you're putting your receivers there. I think they're taking away from the running backs and, like I said, throwing them other places to combat the offense. But I think it will trend back because, in football, it's a trending type thing, like you said. And so I think in the next 2 to 3 years, you will see, the running back position become more premier. And when you got those type of talents like Gordon that came out this year, that's another guy. You remember how high I was on Jamal Charles coming out. I wouldn't say he was quite on that level, but he's not too far behind. So these type of athletes and players coming at the position, and you got a bevy of them coming through, like I said, the next 2 to 3 years, I think it's going to have these NFL GMs have to almost, take these guys in the first and top of the second round. And then your rushing game is going to come back. And then, boom, there you go. On the defensive side, you're going to have to combat that with that D-line and the linebackers from, back in the day type guys, your inside linebacker type. So I think it will trend back in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years. You'll definitely have the running game back in play. So as far as a guy like me, I prefer that. So from what I'm seeing from the college ranks coming through, I think we're going to be trending back that way.
Your peers that are doing the job on other networks here, again, they've come from the more traditional world of journalism. And for CBS to have gone this route, for somebody that's been an insider and it's used to walking these corridors himself, it's a really fascinating thing to see. Talk about how this came to be as far as you and CBS coming to terms on this and how the experience has gone for you and if it's maybe been any different than what you might have expected.
Well, I don't know if it's any different than what I expected because I wasn't, I had an idea what the role was going to be like, but it's evolved through the years, and CBS is, I think, it's the best place in television to work. The outstanding people I work with, and they kind of work to your strengths. In other words, every been a guy who's been involved with scouting talent, looking at tapes. We obviously do some segments on that. I have some prepared every week. Sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't. Depends on what else we want to talk about. experience on a competition committee and rules, experience making trades. So, we look at things from many different angles in addition to, obviously, from the news end. So, but most of the things we can talk about it from the angle of, okay, what is happening? But, how did you handle this? How was it handled in the past? So you have that perspective on things.
Your gig as senior producer for NFL Films, I have to say, that is a name that to football fans, NFL Films is spoken of with reverence, and there's a sense that that's got to be just about the coolest job in the world to have if you love football, because you're there. I think of it as almost like a virtual think tank of football there. From Steve Sable on down, you've got minds there like Ron Jaworski and Greg Cosell and some of the other folks that also are employed by them. Just give a sense to the people of what that's like to work in an atmosphere like that, where everybody's just so into football and appreciative of it and knowledgeable about it.
No, you pretty well described it, actually. That's if you love football, if you really love football, the inner workings of it, the strategy of it, the beauty of it, really. It is a beautiful game when it's played right. NFL Films is the place to be during the season because, you just walk down the hallways and you look in every room and somebody's breaking down a film or somebody's cutting a film or somebody's going through a special role of a coach that was wired that particular week. And, you go past the room where they're doing the matchup show where you have Ron Jaworski's in there, and Charlie Casserly's in there, and Matt Millen is in there, and sometimes you have Carson Palmer is in there. Just the other day, Joe Flacco is in there, and all these guys are sitting there and they're looking at tape and they're breaking games down and they're taking notes and they're talking strategy. It's tremendous. It really is. If you really are into the game, and not in a casual way, but a serious way. It's a tremendous place to be. The energy level is unbelievable. Everyone takes tremendous pride in working there because I think we all understand what NFL Films represents. It is the standard of excellence in sports filmmaking really throughout the world. And you think about what NFL Films has done for professional football in the last 40 years. This sounds self-serving as a guy that's worked for NFL Films for the last 12 years, but I really think the reason that pro football vaulted past baseball and all the other sports over the last 40 years is because the NFL had NFL Films and nobody else had anything like it. The NFL Films has allowed people to watch this game in a way they can't watch any other game. And I think it's contributed mightily to the rise in popularity of this league. And you can trace all of that back and give all the credit to Steve Sable, who is still the president, and his dad Ed Sable, who was the founder of this company back in 1962. It's a great American success story, and a big reason why the NFL is sitting on the throne today is because those guys created the mythology, really, that people associate with pro football in this country.
My sense is 49ers-Seahawks rivalry of the 2010s. At the very least, to me, the leader in the clubhouse. What are your senses on how that may shape up in the years to come?
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I think San Francisco is just built for the long term. Young quarterback, electrifying player, all the pieces covered on offense. Defensively, probably the best team in football right now. Dynamic players on that side of the ball. And a coach that gets the most out of them. That's what Harbaugh has brought to the table. Whatever questions there were regarding his passion level, regarding how that would translate on the professional level, he answered, and he answered very quickly. The one thing about NFL players that I think is sometimes a misnomer, these guys want to be coached. Because if you're being coached the right way and you produce, that means individually you benefit. If the team plays well, you get certainly more publicity. If you get more publicity and the team is winning, contract time, you have more leverage, whether it's with your team or another team. So this idea that, it's the NFL, they don't want to be coached. Yes, they do. If you can help them win, if you can help them put up better numbers, they're on board. You just have to prove it, and Harbaugh has done that. So, yes, San Francisco is certainly in that class. Pete Carroll, very similar mindset of the rah-rah style, the kind of guy that can walk that fine line between being authoritative and being friendly and being close with his guys. He brought that collegiate atmosphere, and it's worked. If you go into Seattle, and I've had the good fortune of calling a few of their games over the last couple of years, a fantastic city, really beautiful stadium, one of the top 5 stadiums in the NFL, a great backdrop with the downtown area just behind it. He has created an atmosphere and a culture that he was brought on to create. This is a guy that said he would change things, and he's done that. He's looked for a certain kind of player. He's delivered on that personnel-wise, and then coaching. Clearly, he has been able to get through to these guys. So I think there are a lot of similarities on how those two teams built their squads, and to get quarterbacks that a bunch of other teams could have had that have that little extra something. That's something that you just can't necessarily look on film and say automatically, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be a star in the NFL. There's something that goes along with heart, how you handle yourself, how guys respond to you, and Kaepernick and Wilson have that, and they have it in excess right now.
Our FDH Director of Research, Nate Noy, has posited to me, and I think there's a very good case to be made for this, that you're going to see maybe disproportionately in the years ahead the number 2 team in the SEC West represented in that Final Four there. That whether it be maybe the loser of, say, the Alabama-LSU game or whatever, a team not having to go to the SEC championship game and risk a loss. We saw that a couple of years ago where Alabama actually managed to get into the national championship game itself as the number 2 team in the SEC West. So do you see with the strength out there that happening a number of times possibly if the team only has one loss, if they lose to the eventual conference champion, that they too will be represented in that Final Four?
Well, I think that theory, that's a sound one, and it sounds like, on its face, it sounds like something that could definitely happen. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see that SEC champion get a spot, a Pac-12 champion get a spot, a Big Ten champion. These are going to go to major conferences. Believe me, unfortunately, we're not going to see, Boise State, or we're not going to see that. Unfortunately, I wish we would, because I think it that makes one of the great things about sports. But this is going to be big boy conferences getting these spots, and that's why I'm in favor of just those major conferences just kind of breaking away from the rest of college football and just having their own division, and let everyone else have their own division as well. So I think you're going to see those spots go to the major conferences. But, yeah, that team that does not get into the SEC title game, it wouldn't shock me if they somehow get one of those 4 spots.
The NFL concussion settlement, and again, we're only on the leading edge of what's being reported about it in the first several hours. Do you get a sense that there may be any kind of media overreach in terms of the reporting of it, this is all behind the NFL now, leaving aside the fact that there's that very serious lawsuit still pending against the helmet manufacturers?
Well, I think it's 2 separate deals. I think the NFL is absolutely breathing a sigh of relief over this ruling. Now, the Rydell and other manufacturer lawsuits do go on, and so that is absolutely a thorny issue, but this was a big one. And, people were claiming existential threats to the NFL based on the potential damages that the league could have been liable for had this gone to trial and had juries, ruled in favor of the players. So you were talking billions and billions of dollars in potential damages, and now you're talking about a fixed sum of $765 million, which comes out to about $24 million per team. One shot done, and they have this in the rearview mirror. So I think that, while the players get, listen, I'm not in a position to be a judge of, hey, was this a great deal for the players or not? This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and did they settle for a little bit less? Well, in every settlement, you probably settle for a little bit less, but in the players' minds, they got needed money to address their problems right here and right now, as opposed to having this drag on for what would have been a number of years. I mean, the appeals for this kind of litigation would have gone on for years, if not a decade or so. So they get the money now, and the NFL at least has some closure on this issue, which was absolutely a threat to to the bottom line.
I mentioned the name Mel Gray, and the first thing a lot of these guys think of is greatest return man in the history of Tecmo Ball. I remember playing in my dorm and the video game, and boy, if you had Mel Gray, you were always a threat to return a punt for a touchdown. So is that something that you're aware of? And I got to imagine you're at least a little bit amused by that.
Yeah, well, of course, you're making me seem real old, but yeah, I'm aware of that. My son tells me all the time that I don't play Tecmo Bowl, but he sort of let me know that I'm there, and I have some type of presence there.
I have to ask you: is the whole SEC hangover in that part of the country kind of fading, or is it still just a real kind of bitter lump about being left out of the championship game for the first time in about a decade?
Yeah, it is a very odd feeling. Well, first of all, congratulations to your Buckeyes on the win Super Bowl, and good luck in that national championship. As far as SEC feelings, hey, look, the South, it's going to take a lot more losing before the South ever thinks the SEC is not the dominant conference in football. I think if you ask 9 out of 10 sports fans down here, they would tell you, hey, we beat each other up all season long. That's why to play in the SEC is so tough and so difficult. From my LSU Tigers, my little Tigers this year, actually, they were just so young. You had so many freshmen and sophomores. So I'm really excited about next season when they've had some time under their belt to mature and they've been able to work into the system a little bit better. Waiting to see who declares for the draft. I know they were talking to several guys, hoping to keep them around for one more year, and that would certainly help. So fingers crossed that actually happens. But best of luck to them if they decide to go, because I know you have to do what's best for you financially, and we certainly understand that decision. But no, I think most sports fans here would say the SEC is still the most dominant conference in the nation, and that this year was just another example of beating each other up game in and game out, Saturday in and Saturday out, and next season will be a different. And a lot of folks are still scratching their heads about that game for Alabama. They seem to be in a great spot that first half and then just kind of imploded.
To somebody like me that would say, gee, it would be a great thing. Maybe you have, your semifinal bowls on New Year's Day. You already have the infrastructure in place with the extra game, and it's more or less a week later, so you already have that. That would have been the stumbling block previously. You're not extending the season by doing that. I understand that's not something you're presently an advocate of, but just give me any of your thoughts on the subject, as you've been outlining them over time.
Yeah, I'm not an advocate of it. On the other hand, I'm absolutely willing to listen to what people think about it. Here's the issue. What if Oregon, Auburn, and TCU are still undefeated after the bowl games? Then who picks? Who decides which two move on? And have you really gained anything from what we have right now? I'm not sure about that. The team number 3 is really going to be unhappy that they didn't get picked. And the other thing about it is a logistical thing, and I think it's really important, and it's that say you're able to play all the bowl games on January 1, which is problematic, but say you're able to do it, and the championship game a week later, you're not giving much time for folks fans to buy their airline tickets, make hotel arrangements. And at some point, would fans say, you know what, I don't think I'll go to the bowl game. I think I'll wait to see if we get in the championship game. Coaches don't have much time to prepare. There's a lot of logistical things that really have to be thought through. And I think the other part of it is, for me, what we call it bracket creep. CREEP, bracket creep. And what it is this would not stay at a four-team tournament. Eventually, Team 3 would be so unhappy that they would ask for change, and so this little +1 would turn into an 18 playoff, and then 12 and 16 maybe. And the reason I'm saying that is, if you think about it, every sports bracket has increased through the years. College basketball certainly has. College baseball, softball, the NFL, NBA, every sport, literally every sports bracket has increased. And I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we thought that if we went to a +1 that we could keep it at that size forever.
Targets and how much quarterbacks are looking to specific wide receivers. That's something that I want to ask you about because to an extent that's something I take with a grain of salt in terms of being in some cases a little bit of a rear view mirror kind of a factor. What kind of secondary were they going up against the week before? Other considerations specific to an opponent. So as you look at it, what's your best advice for people applying that? Because it's been very trendy to talk about the last couple of years, and there certainly is some value that can be extracted from looking at that. But how would you recommend that people specifically look at the amount of targets that their receivers are getting?
Well, it's going back to the analysis that we flopped out on Julio Jones a little while ago. You can't look at the overall numbers to get the picture. Yeah, it's all fine and good. If you're playing at a best ball, set it and forget it, and all you and your buddies are doing is sitting around drinking and watching football for 17 weeks, then it works. But if you're going week to week and playing head-to-head matchups, you got to get granular. You got to see where the ebb and flow are. Are there weeks? And certainly offenses change over time, but if you've got a coordinator, quarterback, coach stability. I know that's a very rare commodity in the NFL anymore, but if you have a little bit of stability there, you could see what the tendencies are, what the trends are, and where a guy's role is. And certainly that becomes very ill-defined as you get deeper past your, say, WR2 spot on your fantasy roster, but it's at least worth looking into to where it's not, okay, they were getting buried, so all of a sudden this guy had an 8-target game, and now you're going all in on your free agent acquisition budget on the waiver wire foolishly when you had a one-game breakout, not with injuries or other issues notwithstanding. So I think a lot of it is you got to get a little more granular and get your hands dirty as you go through the data, because if you just take it at face value, you're probably going to miss something.
Last summer when we had you on, it was just before the start of training camp, and you were just about to start to experience Hard Knocks there with the HBO crew in training camp, and we talked a little bit, and you kind of anticipated what that was going to be like and what that was going to be like for some of your teammates that really hadn't been used to the constant cameras before. So was that experience pretty much as you expected and as your teammates expected?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different when you have cameras around you all the time. And granted, I have a little bit of experience in that, especially being on the road. But then in training camp, it's a little bit different because you're really just trying to focus on football and not really concentrate about what else is going on. And I think what was good about last season was we were able to understand and deal with the actions, and we got it firsthand, especially coming into the season with Hard Knocks following us around. And we saw it, we dealt with it, we understood it, and then we moved on from it, and we recognized that, to be good and to be on the top, you will be in the spotlight, and that's one of the adversities that we had to deal with, and we dealt with it well.
Go back to last week when you look at the spread, when they finally put it out there against the Bears, it was remarked upon at the time that Aaron Rodgers could make maybe about a 7-point difference maybe in what the odds makers set for Green Bay's line. I mean, he is just about the most pivotal player in the league right now, is he not?
I watched him in person. I'm out here in the ATL here in Atlanta. Man, was it last year? First time I ever see Aaron Rodgers play in person here at the Dome in Atlanta. And Matt Ryan's a solid quarterback. I really like Matt Ryan, what he's done here in Atlanta. But you have to see Aaron Rodgers play in person to truly appreciate his ability to make plays on the run, out of the pocket. His demeanor is so incredible. Nothing seems to faze him. I'm not usually that easily impressed, but when I saw him in person and the velocity he gets in that ball made Ryan's arm his arm doesn't have a weak arm, doesn't have a super strong arm, but looked like a pea shooter in comparison. I mean, I was like, wow. I said that Aaron Rodgers is head and shoulders above any quarterback I've seen play in person in a long time. I agree, he's a very special talent.
I want the chaos. I want to see what it looks like. Mike, I'll get my football back eventually, but I want to see the 3-ring circus. I want to see it play out. I don't hardly speak for anybody in this regard, but I'm saying bring on the chaos. I want to grab my bag of popcorn and watch it happen.
Well, in my business, business, which you accurately said is sort of the nexus between sports and business, there is no off season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With all this labor problem, the Super Bowl ends, and there's no downtime whatsoever. Now you just go on to the next thing. A couple of years ago with the NBA, you had the gambling scandal, the Tim Donaghy scandal. That came out of nowhere. Before that with Major League Baseball, you had the Mitchell Report. I was there in that hotel ballroom in New York when they handed out this 500-page textbook, and we all started leafing through it like crazy, trying to find the names. So there's no off season when it comes to sports business. Sports business and sports are just intertwined at this point, and and it's easy to say, well, sports isn't in a business. It is. It is, and maybe it always has been going back to the Olympics in ancient Greece. But the NFL and the NBA, these are corporations, these are entities, these are companies that are running a business, multi-billion-dollar businesses, Fortune 500 businesses, and they have the same problems as everybody else, which is labor problems and talent and scandals and lawsuits. They have the same problems that every big business does.
In terms of the NFL, I'm glad you referenced that, because I'm wondering what you think have been some of the major factors to really kind of turn this around. Obviously, we can point to the work that your association is doing on this, but I think back over a period of time here. I think back to the late 90s, two of the greats of all time, Troy Aikman and Steve Young, both cut short by head injuries. Could have kept going, much longer than that. One would have thought that if there was going to be anything that would have woken up the NFL, it would have happened at least by then, at least about 10 years or so ago now. In terms of them coming around on this, and I see the same things that you do as far as the NFL waking up to the problem. Aside from the work you guys are doing, what do you think have been some of the more persuasive things to really kind of grab a hold of the NFL and say, we got something we got to do something about here?
Well, that was discussed in extensively last night. HBO Real Report did a 30-minute piece on our work and our role in this changing the culture in the NFL. And then what everyone kind of determined was it was increasing research. It was a kind of a changeover within the NFL a little bit in terms of their leadership and the aware. People there wanted to change things, and it was the congressional hearings that played a big role. Congress held a hearing in October, and again in January. I testified at both, along with three other members of the Sports Legacy team, two doctors and a widow, a wife of someone with dementia. And they be put on the public stage like that. Roger Goodell being accused of being big tobacco. As we've been saying for a while, it was good to have that on a public stage, and I think they finally had enough and realized that it was safer and more advantageous for them to change the culture and let the game live on than people say they're killing kids.
Have you known for some time where you're going to be week one, or is that going to come later in the summer?
That's going to come in a little while. We've got our Fox seminar coming up at the beginning of August, but they'll probably give us sometime in the middle of July. I think they'll give us the first few weeks of the season, if not the first half of the season. Probably, I would say the first 5 or 6 games, because basically what happens is you don't want to get too far ahead, because as teams get out of the gate and you get strong teams, somebody is surprisingly good and it's a good marketplace, you want to showcase them as your number 1 or number 2 game. So you don't want to go too far in advance, but yet you want to let everybody know where they're going, at least the first month of the season, and then maybe a little beyond that.
I'm wondering if there's a potential for repurposing that potentially as part of your expanded online strategy.
Well, the first thing is that there's 100 million feet of film in our library. It's the largest sports film library in the world, and the only other human endeavor that has been recorded more extensively on 16-millimeter film than the National Football League is World War II. And eventually we're going to pass them. I think eventually, with the Internet, is that our entire library will be available to fans on the Internet. So if you're a Earl Campbell fan and you want to see, I want to see all of Earl Campbell's touchdowns, you'll be able to access our library and just punch up Earl Campbell touchdowns and every one of his touchdown runs will come up. Or if you're a Browns fan and you want to see something with Bernie Kosar or Brian Sipe, all of that, every Brian Sipe touchdown pass will be accessible through the Internet. So that's going to be, it's still 3, 4, maybe 5 years away, and it's going to come through the NFL.com. But we're at the process now of logging and categorizing that.
You seem to be a guy who got out of it pretty good. They'd obviously like to have a lot more success stories like that. But what do you think about the balance that needs to be struck in terms of doing that and protecting what you clearly see as the integrity of the game?
Well, I think they're between a rock and a hard place. They're walking a fine line from. I understand they need to protect these guys. They need to protect the players, and it's a different type of game than it was before. I think it's more or less of a harder hitting game. I have to admit that, because the guys are bigger, stronger, and faster now. These guys are, you're 6'6", 6'7", 290, 280, 290, and they're running under 4.5. That's unheard of. That's freakish of nature, in a sense. But at the same time, this is a combative sport. This is a sport that, you can really do some bodily harm. You can actually kill somebody on a football field, if you hit them hard enough or hit them a certain way. And I understand the concern because, when you hear about these stories with the, Jim McMahons and all these guys that are really having a hard time, you don't want to hear that. That's the part that you don't want to hear. But it is the nature of this beast. It's the nature of the game. It's a combative sport. I mean, when you sign on when you sign your contract, there are things that tells you that you can actually get killed. I mean, you can do bodily harm. And guess what? We still sign on that dotted line. And I bet you any amount of money that if you ask any of those guys that have chronic issues right now, if you had a chance to turn back the clock and actually get to the point to where you can sign your contract before you even play, would you still sign that contract? And I would say 99.9% of those guys, if not 100, would say yes, I would have signed that contract again. Because we know going in what the results can turn out. Who would think that it would happen? It's not going to happen to me. We get in that mode. That's not going to happen to me. But, again, the nature of the beast of this game is for the defense to knock the snot out of an offensive ball player. That is their job, is to knock the ball loose and knock those guys as hard as they possibly can. The objective for the offense is not to be hit and to score as many points as you possibly can. Now, it's like two rams. You're going to get some contact. Now, the thing of it is and it's cool that what they're doing is that they're focusing on, okay, where do you hit an individual? Okay, where do you place your helmet? Where do you hit and you make sure you hit with your shoulder pads, don't lead with your head. I mean, those are the things that we should have been taught a long time ago, but when the game moves as fast as it does, it's really difficult sometimes to hit that target the way where you're actually aiming, but you don't actually hit it because people are moving so doggone fast. And that's the part that I get frustrated at, because when you're flying in the air and you intentionally trying to go and you go for the shoulder, hit with your shoulder, but people are moving so fast you actually you hit them inadvertently with your helmet. Next thing you know, they're taking $10,000 and $15,000, $25,000 away from guys. I struggle with that part. But they got to figure out a way to protect these guys. And they just got to be careful, because next thing you know, they'll just be putting flags on all the players' hips and turn it into a professional flag football league.
As you look into the future, past the 50th anniversary of the Hall of Fame next year, to where it's going long term, I imagine there's got to be some long term planning that goes on in these areas from time to time. How do you balance in your mind, to the extent that you can really think of it at this point, the fact that you're always going to be promoting a brick and mortar facility
versus making it accessible to people on mobile devices on the internet and continuing to promote it as you're doing very well now?
Well, that's not really true. We're actually, brick and mortar is probably the least thing that the Hall of Fame is.
Oh, okay.
You have to realize something, Rick. The Hall of Fame houses the largest repository of Pro Football Fame history non-video in the world. 7 million documents, programs, artifacts, physical uniforms, all of which have stories behind them. And if you go to Pro Football Hall of Fame website, you'll see the incredible job, which has been expanding rapidly and attracting readers, the incredible job they've done in housing these documents, telling the stories, and letting the public access them, that Pete Fairley and his staff have done for 20 years. I mean, the people who work here at the Hall, this is a lifetime of love. And so they have, I mean, they're it's like walking around Winston Churchill's of football history. I mean, they know more, and they're dispensing more than anybody, anywhere, including the National Football League. I mean, they're the keepers of the history flame. And so that in itself is tremendous information to get out in all the mobile devices and the Twitters and the Facebooks, and we do that. So where this is a living and breathing information giving, disseminating organization, and then you have all the Hall of Famers going out and talking about their lives and their careers. You put those things together, there's a huge amount of living information that we're getting out there on a daily basis. I mean, Pete Fairley just did a tremendous article with Larry Fitzgerald, who, you know, not a Hall of Famer, but obviously has that potential. And you should read the article. Larry talked about how incredibly special it will be to play in the preseason game, which we have here with the Cardinals and the Saints. And by the way, tickets are still available to the public. As you mentioned in your early wrap opening, the game is on Sunday, August 5th at 7 o'clock at Fawcett Stadium. It kicks off the season, national TV and NFL Network. But if you read what Larry talked about, how excited he is to come to Canton, and he's not even in the Hall of Fame, then you understand that the logo of the Hall of Fame, what the Hall of Fame does in terms of making pro football history come alive, has such appeal to millions of fans.
This proposed early intervention program that you, in your capacity as Senior VP of NFL Player Engagement, putting out there, as I understand it, the core objective of it would be to help at-risk prospects before they get into the league to basically maximize their chances of success, minimize their chances of being in trouble.
That's the objective. It's an intervention. Intervention program is the way we've discussed it. You know, how do we, my daily responsibility as it pertains to all personnel, is how do we develop people? And in this particular case, when we look at the athlete, and oftentimes sport itself enables us as athletes. I'm a former athlete, but I know sport, the things that I've done in sport, if I would have done in just being a normal individual, I am recommended behind it. There's costly penalties, but there are things that we've either experienced throughout our lifetime in high school, middle school, college, that we've never really addressed. And we're talking about the total wellness of the athlete, the long-term effects of relationships, emotional and psychological effects. So we want to be able to address and make sure that people are getting proper treatment, proper counseling, and they're addressing things that never had been addressed during their growth. So an early intervention program is we've been in constant dialogue internally, all parties, on how do we assist the athlete as he transitions into the game.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and The Periodic Table of Elements.